was 3:17 a.m. when Margaret Thornton triggered the paint bomb for the second time that week. The motion sensor captured her climbing over my back fence, dressed in what looked like tactical gear from a discount army surplus store, moments before the modified sprinkler system activated and doused her in washable neon pink paint mixed with biodegradable glitter. The automated speaker I'd installed bellowed, "Trespasser detected at 3:17 a.m., Margaret Thornton, smile for the camera." Her shriek could probably be heard 3 blocks away as she tumbled backward into my decorative cactus garden that I'd strategically repositioned just the night before. The footage was already backing up to 3 different cloud servers and streaming live to my private security channel that I'd shared with the local police department. I'm Marcus Chen, and I moved to Maple Ridge Estates 3 years ago thinking I'd found the perfect quiet neighborhood to work on my robotics consulting business from home. The houses were well maintained, the streets were clean, and the community seemed peaceful. What I didn't realize was that this tranquility came at a price, enforced by Margaret Thornton, the HOA president who ruled our little suburb with an iron fist wrapped in a pastel cardigan. Margaret was 62 years old, stood 5'3" in her sensible pumps, and possessed the demeanor of a drill sergeant crossed with a particularly vindictive substitute teacher. She had this habit of speed walking through the neighborhood every morning at 6 a.m. sharp, clipboard in hand, documenting every blade of grass that dared grow a millimeter too tall. My troubles began innocently enough when I installed a smart doorbell system for my home security. Apparently, the sleek black design violated Section 12.4 of the HOA guidelines, which stated all doorbell fixtures must be brass or brushed nickel to maintain neighborhood consistency. The first violation notice appeared on my door within 24 hours, laminated and attached with enough tape to survive a hurricane. When I emailed back explaining that the doorbell was temporary while I waited for a custom brass cover to arrive, Margaret responded with a 17-paragraph email about the importance of immediate compliance and community standards. Then came the daily inspections. Margaret would stand at the edge of my property line with a tape measure, checking the height of my grass, the angle of my mailbox, and the precise shade of white on my window trim. She'd take photos from every conceivable angle, sometimes bringing along her friend Dolores, who would nod sagely while Margaret muttered about property values. The situation escalated when she reported me for running an illegal business because a FedEx truck made 3 deliveries in 1 week. She told the neighbors I was probably manufacturing drugs because she saw me carrying boxes into my garage at odd hours. In reality, I was receiving robotics parts for a legitimate contract with a tech company, but Margaret had already decided I was public enemy number 1. Then she crossed a line that changed everything. I started noticing small things were off when I'd return home. A window screen slightly bent, my garden hose coiled differently than I'd left it, fresh footprints in my flower bed despite it not having rained in weeks. At first, I thought I was being paranoid, but then my security system started picking up anomalies. Motion detection at 3 a.m. when I was asleep, my smart lock registering failed entry attempts, and strangest of all, my back gate latch being opened when I knew I'd secured it. I installed more cameras, hidden ones this time, and what I discovered made my blood run cold. Margaret had somehow obtained a key to my back gate and was entering my property multiple times per week in the dead of night. The footage showed her trying doors, peering through windows, and on one occasion, she actually entered my unlocked shed and spent 20 minutes photographing the contents with a flashlight. When I showed this to the police, they said without clearer evidence of criminal intent, it would be hard to prosecute. She was the HOA president after all, and she could claim she was conducting security checks for the neighborhood's safety. That's when I decided if the law wouldn't help me, I'd have to get creative. The breaking point came when I returned from a 3-day business trip to find my home had been entered. Nothing was stolen, but things were moved. My kitchen drawers had been reorganized, my mail had been opened and neatly stacked, and most disturbing of all, there was a handwritten note on my refrigerator that said, "Your milk expires tomorrow," with a smiley face. Security footage revealed Margaret had spent 4 hours in my house while I was gone, going through everything from my closets to my medicine cabinet. She'd even rearranged my bookshelf by color. The woman had completely lost her mind with power. That night, I stayed up until dawn engineering my response. If Margaret wanted to play games, I'd show her what happens when you mess with someone who designs security systems for a living. I started with the basics, motion-activated floodlights positioned to create maximum disorientation without causing permanent eye damage. Then came the automated sprinkler system, but not just any sprinklers. These were precision-targeted, programmed to activate only when Margaret's specific height and gait pattern were detected. The paint bombs were my masterpiece. Non-toxic, washable, but mixed with biodegradable glitter that would stick to everything. I positioned them at every possible entry point, each one tagged with UV marking powder that would show up under black light for weeks. I also installed speakers throughout my property, all connected to a system that would loudly announce the time, date, and identity of any trespasser, complete with a live stream notification sent directly to my phone and automatically forwarded to a public security channel I'd created. The legal preparation was just as thorough. I filed reports with the police for every incident, created a detailed timeline with video evidence, and even hired a lawyer to send Margaret a cease and desist letter which she ignored. The first time Margaret triggered my defenses, she was covered in blue paint at 2:43 a.m. while trying to check if my garbage cans were regulation size. The recording of her sputtering and cursing while the speaker system announced her presence was pure gold. She tried to claim she was investigating a suspicious noise, but the footage clearly showed her measuring my trash bins with a ruler. She stayed away for exactly 3 days before trying again, this time wearing a rain poncho and goggles. But she didn't account for the pressure sensors I'd installed in my lawn. The moment she stepped onto my grass, foam machines activated, covering her in biodegradable foam that hardened just enough to slow her movement while the authorities arrived. The third attempt was when she triggered the paint bomb I described earlier. But this time, I had something special prepared. I'd been documenting everything, creating a comprehensive file that I titled Project Trespasser, complete with timestamps, video evidence, and a pattern analysis showing Margaret's escalating behavior. The police couldn't ignore it anymore when I presented them with 47 separate incidents over 3 months, all captured in high-definition video with audio. The county prosecutor actually laughed out loud when he saw the compilation video I'd created, set to classical music, showing Margaret repeatedly getting caught in my various deterrents. But the real revelation came when investigators reviewed Margaret's computer, seized during the criminal investigation. She had files on every resident in Maple Ridge Estates, with detailed plans for compliance enforcement that included breaking and entering schedules, spare key locations she'd somehow obtained, and even psychological profiles she'd created based on garbage inspections. The emergency HOA meeting was held in the community center, and I came prepared with a presentation titled Margaret Thornton, a Case Study in Suburban Surveillance. I played videos of her break-ins, showed evidence of her entering multiple homes, and revealed that the GPS trackers in my paint bombs had logged her visiting 14 different properties after midnight in the past month alone. The room was silent except for the occasional gasp as residents recognized their own homes in the footage. Tom Bradley from Oak Street turned white when he saw video of Margaret in his garage at 4 a.m., photographing his motorcycle. Sarah Kim started crying when footage showed Margaret entering her greenhouse and taking clippings from her prize-winning orchids. The vote to remove Margaret from the HOA board was unanimous. Even Dolores voted against her. But that was just the beginning of Margaret's problems. The district attorney filed charges for criminal trespassing, breaking and entering, stalking, and harassment. The evidence was overwhelming, especially when combined with testimony from multiple neighbors who had experienced similar violations. During the trial, Margaret tried to claim she was protecting property values and ensuring neighborhood safety, but the prosecutor presented her own written notes where she detailed plans to eliminate undesirable elements and force out residents who didn't meet her personal standards. The judge was not amused, particularly when he saw footage of Margaret using a crowbar to open my shed while wearing a head-mounted camera like some sort of suburban spy. Her lawyer tried to argue for leniency based on her age and previously clean record, but the judge pointed out that her position of authority made her crimes worse, not better. Margaret Thornton was found guilty on all charges. The judge sentenced her to 18 months in prison, 3 years of probation, and ordered her to pay $35,000 in fines plus restitution to all affected residents. She was also banned from serving on any HOA board for life and required to stay 500 feet away from all victims' properties. When the verdict was read, Margaret's face went from red to white to a concerning shade of purple. She stood up, pointed at me with a shaking finger, and screamed that I had ruined everything, that the neighborhood would fall apart without her vigilance. The bailiff had to physically escort her out as she ranted about property values and the chaos that would ensue from unrestricted doorbell colors. Her final words before the courtroom doors closed were, "You'll all regret this when your grass grows past 3 inches."